products.
And very briefly, you've been critical about the pace of reform under Labor. Nonetheless, what do you acknowledge about the achievements of Labor?
There are several. It actually was the government that implemented financial deregulation following the Campbell inquiry. The Hilmer reforms, the national competition policy reforms, are a great achievement, and it built on the evolving relationship with the Asian region and took several important initiatives there. It stands to its credit that it did a lot to open up and internationalise the economy.
Okay. Thanks very much for that, Paul Barrett. And while we're waiting for John Howard to make his appearance in Sydney and claim victory, I think one of the fizzes of this campaign was the so-called Kennett factor. Maxine McHugh looking at some of those seats with the votes well and truly in now. It is a different picture, isn't it?
It is, Kerry, except I think the first thing you have to say is that while there's certainly a swing away from the Labor Party in Victoria, it's nothing like, say, the dimensions that we've seen, say, in New South Wales or Queensland. Now, Anthony, what comments would you make, say, about the trend, the overall trend in Victoria? Because the swing's been held at the moment about 1.7%, isn't it?
Yeah, the swing's very minor, in fact, in Victoria. There's, in fact, been swings to the Labor Party in a couple of seats, so it actually is... The difference is, like, we'll just look at a few seats in a moment. There's only 2 seats changing hand in Victoria.
Okay, I think now, Kerry, you might want to take something up.
I can see Kim Beazley on the screen. I'm not sure whether we've got sound, but I'd like to have a go at it anyway. Kim Beazley, can you? It's Kerry O'Brien. Can we bring the sound up, please?
And with what is left, and we've got some very good people left, I think we've got the intellectual heft to be able to do that.
Now, if you lose tonight, will you call it quits?
Let's wait to see what happens. I think that there'd be a sentiment in my family that would be a really good idea.
Mr. Beazley, can we just speak Labor Party leadership results? When would you like to see that result?
That is really a matter for Mr. Keating. Mr. Keating is still the leader of the Labor Party. He's announced he would not contest a subsequent ballot, but it is up to the leader to determine when caucus meets.
Ladies and gentlemen, can I say to you, and my first words are addressed to all of the people of Australia, that I am very conscious of the enormous responsibility that has been placed upon me and upon my colleagues by the verdict of the Australian people today. I feel many emotions tonight, but the deepest emotion of all I feel is that of humility, that the Australian people have given me the privilege of leading the government of this country. And I want to say that the government that I will lead will be a government not only for the people who voted for us, but also for the people who voted against us. 9 years ago, when I was unsuccessful in an election, I said in my concession speech that the things that united Australians were infinitely more important and more enduring than the things that divided Australians. That has always been my political credo, and it will be a political credo that I will carry forward in the governance of this country over the next 3 years. I want to thank Paul Keating for his gracious words. I want to wish Paul Keating and Anita and their family a good health and happiness in the future. Can I say that although we have been vigorous opponents, he has been a great warrior for his own political cause, and despite our differences, that is something that I recognise. I owe thanks to many people, and I will come to that in a moment. I want to make it clear that although uniting the Australian people will be the cornerstone of my approach in government, we have been elected with a mandate, a very powerful mandate. And whilst I will seek at all times unity and a common point of view, we have not been elected to be just a pale imitation of the government that we have replaced. We have been given this emphatic mandate tonight because there are many things that have been left undone that need to be attended to and addressed. We need to implement the program on which we were elected, and I want to make it very clear that there will be an absolute determination with fairness and understanding to do that, and to do it with resolution and without qualification. I want to thank all of my colleagues. I especially wish to thank Tim Fischer and the National Party. I will lead a coalition in government as I have led a coalition in opposition, and I look forward to working very closely with Tim Fischer as the Deputy Prime Minister of Australia. To all of my parliamentary colleagues, I say thank you, and I particularly want to extend my thanks to the Liberal Party organisation, to Tony Staley, the Federal President, to Andrew Robb and to Ron Walker, the Honorary Federal Treasurer, and to many other members of the organisation who have worked so tirelessly. And can I say it is an immensely proud moment for me tonight to lead back into government the Liberal Party of Australia. We have endured 16 years without a federal electoral victory, and tonight is an immensely proud and wonderful moment for our great party. And in celebrating the miracle of democracy, that we can peacefully and respectfully transfer power through the ballot box and through no other device, let us also, as Liberals and as Liberal supporters, celebrate the magnificent win that we have had tonight. It has been a win that has not just reclaimed those who voted Liberal in the past and those who are by habit swing voters, but it is a victory that has also embraced many traditional Labor Party areas of Australia. And when you look at the swings in Western Sydney and in some of the traditional Labor areas of Sydney, And I think of the magnificent result in Queensland and that wonderful result in South Australia and the way in which the Liberal Party held its very high proportion of seats in Victoria, and the early returns in Western Australia are very encouraging. It is a comprehensive endorsement of the philosophy and the approach of the Liberal Party. And to all of you, to all of you who have endured the barbs and the insults, and you've heard your party written off, I want to say to the rank and file of the Liberal Party, you have endured far too many years in the political wilderness. And tonight it is a victory that we all share. It is not mine alone. It is mine because I was given, from the moment I became the leader of the Liberal Party just over a year ago, I was given the most magnificent loyalty and support by my parliamentary colleagues and all of the members of the organisation. And I say from the bottom of my heart how grateful I am for that support and that loyalty, because that has given us the victory that we have tonight. I said when I launched our campaign only a few weeks ago that one of the great features of the Liberal Party was that it was owned by no section of the Australian community, and our only obligation is to give good government to all of the Australian people. And it will be my intention and my commitment that from now I and my colleagues will devote our all to delivering good government, for doing good things, and for delivering the maximum degree of unity and cohesion to the Australian people. There is something special about being an Australian, and today I experienced, along with everybody else, I had to queue up to cast my vote. And the bloke in front of me turned around and said, "Oh, hello." And he had a Labor Party how to vote ticket, and he didn't have a Liberal one, and he said, "Well, it's nice to meet you, but I'm not going to vote for you." that is a celebration of what Australia is all about. The very last thing that I want to say is a special word of thanks to some people who've been very close to me over the past months. I want to thank my own personal staff. The personal staff of a party leader carry enormous burdens and responsibilities. And I am personally very, very grateful to all of my staff for the magnificent job that they have done. They have shared the disappointments, and tonight they share the exhilaration of this remarkable victory. And lastly, can I say to my wife Jeanette, and to my three children, Melanie, Tim, and Richard. And more than any poor people in the world, they have kept me going, and they have sustained me, and they have shared the difficulties as well as the successes of politics. And anybody in public life should always remember the contribution of their families, and I unhesitatingly express not only my affection but also my enormous gratitude to my wife and my three children for what they have done for me and what they continue to mean to me. My very last words are to all of the people of Australia, to my fellow Australians. I am both deeply moved and I understand very, very deeply and very profoundly the responsibility that has been given to me tonight. And I can but make a simple promise and a simple commitment that from now on I will do all I can to advance the welfare of all of the Australian people. I will focus on those things that bind us together. I will focus on our strengths. I will defend the interests and the values and the principles of this country, both domestically and internationally. There is something very special, there is something unique about our nation and about being Australian. And I commit myself and my future government to the service of all of the Australian people. Thank you.
And I think underneath it all, an elated John Howard tonight, and so he should be, because his majority in the first Howard government will be somewhere, it would seem, between 44 and 48 seats. In the seat of Holt, we're crossing now to a man who's entering the House of Representatives for the first time, but he's certainly no stranger to the Parliament. He's been in the Senate for many years. Gareth Evans.
Hi, Kerry.
You can't be feeling too flash at the moment, I would have thought. Not a great way to enter the House of Representatives.
No, it's not, Kerry. We're obviously feeling pretty desolate about it. In particular, I grieve very deeply for the loss of so many colleagues, both in the ministry and in the Parliament, who've worked long and hard to make this a better country. I feel a particular grievous loss in the case of Paul Keating, who has been a very visionary, of course, leader, a great leader for Australia. But at the same time, I mean, one can't begrudge John Howard his victory. He's been a dogged little battler over the years, and he's finally got what he's been working for so hard. So this is his night, and we've got to now simply regroup, rethink about our own future, long and hard, and that's what we'll be doing.
And got it in a huge way. Now, as we were speaking, and as John Howard was speaking, as John Howard came out onto the platform, the news for Kim Beazley in Western Australia was not good, but it seems in the interim period that there has been something of a swing back to him, and where he was 6% behind at one point with about 13% of the vote counted, he's now only apparently about 3% behind. If Kim Beazley survives this election, would you support his leadership of the Labor Party?
I think Kim is the very obvious candidate for the leadership because of the brilliant role he's played as deputy leader. I think it's premature for us to be thinking about all of these things really at this stage. We've got to, as a party, sit down, as I said, and think long and hard about what roles each of us are going to have in the future of the party. But Kim is obviously the candidate for the leadership job, and I fully recognise that.
Why do you think the loss has been so massive? What would you nominate as the fundamental elements that have made it a difference between an acceptable defeat and a savage defeat?
Well, I'm not sure about the order of magnitude question, but I think the underlying reasons are both longevity and incumbency. Being in government a long time means that inevitably, particularly I suppose given the Australian tradition of fair go to the underdog and so on, you've got to be constantly working against that, and that was always going to be harder and harder each time. And maybe it was that the case that 93 was really the occasion when that particular cow was going to come home, but it was just deferred for 3 years as a result of the GST. That's an argument. Incumbency is also obviously a problem. I think every government in the Western world has had to deal with the problem of change, and it hasn't been popular as a result. That's the problem that the Howard government is now going to have to confront, and we just hope, of course, that people will understand a little bit better the nature of the difficulties that we fought and overcome when they see how the other side has to contend with them over the next 3 years.
Being reflective very briefly, how difficult is it?
I'm sorry, Kerry, could you say that again?
Being reflective very briefly, is it really difficult, on the one hand, to be a government of change in a world of change, but at the same time still somehow stay in touch with the people that you're representing as a government?
I think it is. That's a very fair analysis. I mean, what I've been saying to the troops here at Holt is I think we got the values right, I think we got the vision right, and I don't think we ought to be resiling from any of the fundamental things that we've been articulating in this respect, because I think they are the right sorts of values and visions to take us into the 21st century. But getting the policy mix right to go with that and communicating that to a lot of people who feel very uncertain and uncomfortable and hurt about their own family circumstances and worried about their own future, that's a hell of a task. It's been a hell of a task for every industrialised government in the world, and it's been a hell of a task for us.
Gareth Evans, that's, as I said at the start, not ideal circumstances for you coming into the House of Representatives this way. It's not so long ago that you, the speculation about Gareth Evans was whether he was going to end up in the High Court of the United Nations.
Well, I think the options have been narrowing somewhat over the last little while. But,
they certainly have.
Let me just say that, you know, I really have the fires of determination still burning within me to bounce back and to get the Labor Party, the Labour movement, back on course. There's plenty of us that share those fires of determination. We're not going to feel punctured and deflated by this. We're going to regroup very quickly and be a very, very effective opposition.
Gareth Evans, thanks for talking with us.
Thank you, Kerry. Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Okay, and I'd like to come back to our own panel now, and in particular, if I can persuade Ian Sinclair to put his phone down. If I can have your other ear. Ian, one question I'm interested in. You've been in the Parliament longer than anybody else. In fact, you go back, I think, to about, was it 1963 you came in?
Far, far longer than I wish to think. Yes, you're right, Kerry.
And John Howard is going to be your seventh. Yes, your sixth or you?
Well, he won't be. He'll be the sixth.
He'll be the sixth Conservative Prime Minister you've served.
But there have been Billy Snedden, Andrew Peacock, John Hewson, Alexander Downer as other Liberal leaders.
So that's almost a cricket team of,
very nearly.
Of coalition leaders.
Well, if they play as well as the...
actually. Liberal Prime Ministers.
That's right. And if they play as well as the Australian cricketers are at the moment, I think we'll all be delighted.
Yeah, well, that's not like the West Indies.
No.
One question I'm interested in is how you're going to serve this one. Would you accept the role of Speaker if it's offered?
Well, I haven't really thought about tomorrow. I've been too worried about today, actually.
I'm not totally convinced about that.
Well, I can assure you that one thing that I know that John Howard will be intent on doing is improving what we see, the quality of debate in the House. It's been a real worry to us that the general nature of ministerial statements, for example, I'm sure Barry would agree, have been such they've made so many more statements outside the House than in the Parliament. And I think we do need to look at the relative balance between the Parliament and the Executive. And that's said not just as somebody who's seen both sides in government and in opposition, but it's somebody who worries about the Parliament. I think that's going to be one of the real challenges for the new Howard ministry, to see whether there is a different relationship between the Parliament and the Executive, and if I can play some part in that, I'd be happy to do
I was going to say, well, let's not muck around. Why don't you say you'll accept the speakership if it's offered?
Well, I must admit that I think that I'd rather like to be a senior minister, but I don't know that that option is going to be available.
You'd be very good.
Thank you very much.
You'd be a very good speaker.
I think he'd be, on the opposition's, on the other side, I think he'd certainly be the most superior contender.
You'd happily see Ian Sinclair as a bipartisan proposition?
He should have supported me last time round.
I didn't know. Well, we never had a vote for the National Party leadership. I mean, we had our plants there, but we never had actual...
Tim's done a very good job, and I'd like to pay tribute to him tonight. I think he's done a wonderful job through the campaign.
And one other question before we move on. You'd also remember from the past, from those big majorities in the first two Fraser governments, that big majorities are not always a great proposition for a leader. Plenty of firefights can come from that.
Well, I think that it's going to be an interesting parliament, put it that way, Kerry. It's actually far more difficult, as everybody knows, when you have a big majority than when you have a small majority, because there are a lot of people, certainly now, newcomers to the parliamentary scene, people coming with ambitions and aspirations, which sadly the inevitability of the politics doesn't allow them to fulfil immediately. And I think it is going to be quite a task to maintain the momentum that we all believe John Howard's achieved today.
What about if Bob Catter moved an MPI? Would you give it priority?
That's
just at the moment.
We'll
I think Bob Catter might have a few problems with getting recognition for a lot of us for some of his statements.
Hey, now we've got Bob Brown standing by in Tasmania, and there's a very interesting tussle going on there. But before we do cross, very briefly with Amanda Vanstone, you've seen John Howard make his victory speech tonight. What do you think is going to be his toughest task as leader? You had a lot of problems inside the party over many of your years in opposition. You'd have to say that one of the things that has got you to the line this time is that you have come as a united party. How difficult is it going to be for John Howard to maintain what he has talked about as a broad church with such a large majority in the parliament?
Well, you have to admit he's done a fabulous job. There were some people who thought when he regained the leadership that he would try and shift the party to the right, and quite the opposite. He took us right back onto the middle ground and has soundly beaten Labor on the middle ground. Give them an absolute thrashing is the only way you can describe it. Now, he's displayed in having the capacity to do that, but he has got the capacity to bring the two strands of the party together. He's done a perfect job of it over the last 12 months. It might be a bit harder with more people, but no harder than it would be for any party that had, or coalition that had such a large majority. That's just a fact of life.
And are you saying that is now going to be the place that the coalition will seek to occupy and maintain in Australian politics, the middle ground?
Well, that's where we've had this fabulous victory. One of the difficult jobs for him, though, will be, as he rightly indicates, he wants to restore the trust that people have in their government. I think that is one of the sad burdens of a Labor government, a bad legacy from them. Over 13 years, people have diminished their trust in what the government says. Paul Keating, without doubt, has been a fabulous politician, but I wouldn't give you too many pennies for his qualities as a parliamentarian. Respect for the parliamentary process has fallen down quite dramatically, and restoration of that will be a big task for all of us.
Okay, we've got Tim Fisher sticking his head through the rough. Tim, are you going to come up here? Okay. Bob Brown, if we can just ask you to hold fire for one moment. We've got Tim Fisher joining us very quickly.
No, I won't have one of those. Congratulations.
Go on.
Not in your party.
Go on.
Not in your party, Ian. I don't think you recognise them. Tim Fisher, what are you? We're waiting for you to be mic'd. We'll just stick it on your lapel there and not worry too much about the earpiece. What are your priorities going to be in government? Well, let's narrow it down. The first, you're going to be facing it this next week, massive majority. What are your immediate priorities going to be?
Well, quite properly there for John Howard to work through as Prime Minister, and it will be an inclusive leadership, and we will deliver change. But on the specific areas in trade, there's a great deal of work to be done building towards the Singapore ministerial round of the WTO, the forthcoming APEC Manila Summit, and I might add I've accepted the ministerial brief in the last 5 minutes already. It'll be down to work, but an ambassador to
Sorry,
APEC...
what have you done in the last 5 minutes?
Accepted under the Westminster Protocol, the Prime Minister having conceded, I've accepted the brief to the incoming Minister, and that is as it should be. I expect DFAT to be efficient. They have been tonight. I'll be studying it on the Sabbath.
You've already received the departmental brief telling you an up-to-date position as far as your own department is concerned.
Yes, and I would expect nothing less.
I wonder if Peter Costello's already had a call from Treasury.
Well, I'll stay clear of that one. But,
took a while for the phone to ring though, didn't it?
Yeah, but we made arrangement for that. I know DFAT quite well, obviously, from my own work overseas and so forth. It's down to work, Kerry. Specific priorities, ambassador for APEC is part of our policy. We'll be appointing an ambassador to Gleibeck, if you get right down to the very specific.
Okay, come back. I mean, you're Deputy Prime Minister. We're not interested just in hearing about trade. As Deputy Prime Minister, you can talk much more broadly than that. Would you hope to see a mini budget?
Look, these are matters which might properly await the pre-briefing from Treasury, the full briefing from Treasury to Peter Costello. I sense that there's a great deal of work to be done with regard to picking up the pieces on the economic front. I sense there's been an under-profiling of some of the areas of crisis, be it in beef and wool, be it in areas of manufacturing industry and the like. We will be governing for all Australia. We'll be getting on with the job, but it's...
What about the deficit? If you find yourself with a deficit of $6 or $8 billion going into 1996-97, would you be prepared to canvass a wider range of spending cuts than you've prefaced in your
Kerry,
campaign?
I didn't come down the last shower. This is about the government of Australia. We'll get the briefings, the decisions will be worked through and made. The government will be sworn in. And yes, I think we will not see Parliament sitting until the end of the Senate count. Quite a delay in that regard, but everything else will be up and running early.
Okay, Tim Fischer, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Kerry.
Okay, we've now we've got Bob Brown, a Senate candidate for the Greens in Tasmania, and a candidate vital for their thrust to expand their operations in the Senate. Bob Brown, how confident are you feeling right now? Because it's been neck and neck, and as I understand it, Robert Bell has a slight edge at the minute. Is that right?
Yes, it's a great position for us to be in, though. We've been put behind in the last three polls over the last 3 weeks. We've had everybody having a go at us, from the Fred Nile party to Harradine to the government to the Democrats, and yet we've seen a swing around in Tasmania. The Tasmanian people have voted in greater numbers than expected for the Greens, and we're in the best position, I think, of Green, Democrat and Labor to take that final Senate seat.
And yet the way things are shaping up, if Robert Bell beats you in Tasmania, the way the Democrat vote has gone around Australia, you'd have to acknowledge that it's been quite a substantial resurgence from 1993, and in fact the Democrats, it would seem, are going to hold the balance of power in the Senate in their own right.
Yes, and they would have done that, I think, on the pre-poll indications. And congratulations to the Democrats, because they have polled well right round the country. Congratulations to the incoming government, and commiserations to the Labor Party. But I can say this, if we do make it from here into the Senate, the new government is going to have a very strong advocate for alternative social and environmental policies in the Senate, on the floor of the Parliament, and it will be that toehold we need to have more Senate seats and more House of Representatives.
Bob Brown, I'll ask you to hold on, because I've got Cheryl Curnow here, of course. Cheryl Curnow, how are you feeling about Tasmania? Do you think Robert Bell does have the edge?
Oh, I think it's line ball to the very end, Kerry. We've always said that, and I don't think either of us can say tonight that we have or we haven't won. But contrary to what Bob said, we've been behind the 8 ball for over a year, with all mainstream journalists saying Bob Brown's a shoo-in, Bob Brown's a shoo-in, Robert Bell, go away now. This has been a very good campaign for Robert Bell and the Tasmanian division, and I really congratulate them.
Tell me about Western Australia. What sense do you have about Christabel Chamarette of the West Australian Greens versus your candidate?
Well, what I know so far is that the Democrats are at 5.5% and the Greens are at 5.1%. If we maintain even that slight edge, we'd be able to reclaim a Senate seat in Western Australia. But again, I'd rather wait till we've counted more of the vote.
Okay, Bob Brown, if in fact you miss out in Tasmania and Christabel Chamarette, one of the 2 Greens in the Senate, in the last Senate, loses in Western Australia, you would have to accept that as a significant setback, would you not?
Yes, but don't be dismal, Kerry.
I'm not being dismal.
Yes, you are.
I'm just trying to concentrate on the question.
We're looking at, I'm giving you the hypothetical, which is more near the reality, and that is that we will pick up a Senate seat in Tasmania and that the Greens will hang on in Western Australia. We're the fledgling party. We tend to get it stuck into us, but let me say this. We're here for the long haul. We are hoping we can pick up both those seats, make it 3 in the Senate,
and from that toehold move on. It's a great vote for us here in Tasmania. It is line ball, and we won't know for 2 weeks, but I'd rather be in our position than either the position of the Democrats, who needed the support of Fred Nile and Paradine and the right wing to get where they went to, than the position that they've got, or the Labor Party. So it's been great going for us.
This is, look, on the one hand, we're talking about we are talking about two parties that are trying to claim, if I can put it this way, the virtuous centre of Australian politics, the virtuous place in Australian politics. And yet here you are in quite open antagonism. Now, why does it have to come to that, and what does it ultimately say about the kind of message that you're trying to preach?
Well, it says that we tried the turn the other cheek, as you know, right through this campaign, but Cheryl Kernot kept coming. So we had to turn around and just make our stake on policies like a strong stand on the forests, as the Democrats weaken, a strong stand on Telstra, a strong stand on a number of other issues which we will take into the Senate if we get there. There is a need for people who will stand strongly on issues and not waver in the middle, and not want to take the expedience of support from extremists from outside that realm of politics to get a political advantage. We Greens aren't into that. We've been true in our preference flow. We'll be true in the Parliament if we get there, and I hope I do, so that the missing component of the voters who won't be represented, 13% of voters tonight, are not going to have representation in the Senate. If we had proportional representation, that's one of the first things I would be moving for, then there would be 20 non-big party members of the lower house, and that's an advance that this country has to be looking forward to, and there's a challenge for the Liberal Party first up.
Okay. Thanks for that, Bob Brown. I'd like to, Maxine and Anthony, I'd like to take a look at Western Australia again and just see how things are shaping up there.
Well, Kerry, we'll take a look at Kim Beazley's seat in Brand just to see how he's faring. I mean, Kim Beazley must be wondering, you know, what he's got to do to find a safe seat. I mean, he moves from Swan to Brand. But in terms of what we were talking about a little bit earlier, things are coming back Mr Beazley's way. On the figures we've got at this stage, Kim Beazley's got 42.9% of the primary vote. Penny Hearn for the Liberal Party's got 44.1% of the primary vote there. If we look at the projection, well, that's actually the two-party, really, isn't it? With nearly 50%.
There's no
of the vote
two-party
counted?
preferred in yet. That's just...
that's still the projection, isn't it?
That's still an estimate of preferences. Now, a couple of points about that electorate. First, it's 91,000. It's the highest enrolment apart from the Northern Territory in the country. What we've been seeing is the swing to the Liberal Party has been falling as the night goes on. As the big booths up, which are in the growing outer suburbs of Perth, come in, the swing seems to be dropping off. Secondly, they are estimates of preferences. They're not real preferences. We've factored in the Democrats flowing to the Liberal Party, which is what the Democrats had on their how-to-vote card. We don't know whether that's going that way. You won't know a figure in that seat until we get some preferences later in the evening.
Well, what's your sense about it, though, at this stage?
I don't have a sense about that until I get some preferences.
All right, okay. Move on now to the seat of Canning. Now, this takes in Perth South East. George Gear has held this for the Labor Party since 1984, but on these figures, with nearly 60% of the vote counted, George Gear's got 43% of the primary vote. Ricky Johnston for the Liberal Party has also 43.1% of the primary. If we look at the projection there, neck and neck, but the Liberals just slightly ahead there.
Just an interesting point on that is that the Democrats in that electorate have outpolled the Greens, which might be an interesting thing to watch for in the upper house. Again, there's no preferences in that. Their estimates of preferences will have to wait till later in the evening.
All right. Moving on now to the seat of Kalgoorlie, where Graham Campbell obviously is very keen to take that as an independent this time round. Now, we've got, nearly 54% of the vote counted. Graham Campbell at the moment on 34.9% of the primary vote. The Liberal there, Ian Taylor, I've got on my computer 34.3% of the primary vote. If we look at the projection there...
It's predicting an independent win for Graham Campbell. There's still a lot of the votes to come in that electorate, but given that he's running neck and neck with Campbell and the Liberals have got a quarter of the vote, there's no way that, you'd be astonished if Campbell lost that one. I think Graham Campbell's won that seat, and he's back into Parliament, joining a growing band of independents.
Well, and speaking of independents, if we look at the seat of Moore, This is where Paul Filing, this time round, is running as an independent, not as a Liberal. He was disendorsed. Now, if we look at these figures, 84% of the vote counted.
Filing has 35% in that other vote there.
Right, he's in the other, right?
He's included with some other candidates. Labor Party's running second, Liberals third. Whoever runs second will give third will give preferences to Filing, and if you factor in the preferences, he will win that very comfortably.
So he'll be taking his place as a Liberal independent in the new Parliament. Look now at the seat of Curtin. This is another one. Alan Rocher here was with the Liberal Party, of course, this time round standing as an independent. Now, if we look at this vote, 72% of the vote counted at this stage. He's in the other category there.
He has 30.9% of the vote. The important factor here is the Labor Party has only 20% of the vote. We've got 71% counted. The Labor Party won't catch up with Rocher. They're directing their preferences to Rocher, and he will win that comfortably. Another independent in the Parliament.
Seat of Swan now, which of course is the seat that Kim Beazley has vacated. Now this is extremely marginal, this 1.2%. It takes in Perth's inner southern suburbs. Now if we look at the replacement Labor candidate here, Jane Saunders, she's got 36% of the primary vote. The Liberal candidate here, Don Randall, 43.1% of the primary vote. Anthony?
Importantly in that election, there's an independent called Brian Hilbert, who was the Liberal candidate last time. He has 10% of the vote. I've factored in his preferences as flowing to the Liberal Party quite strongly. We don't have any preference counts in that electorate yet, and I wouldn't make, given that there's a lot of preferences floating around, I wouldn't make a bet on that one yet. But the fact that the Liberal Party has such a high primary vote suggests that they'll probably win that seat.
So, Kerry, at this stage, the West still looking uncertain. Kerry? West, they're basically conclusion there, West looking uncertain at this stage.
Sorry?
The West looking uncertain.
I think...
Okay. The West is looking uncertain.
I think it's actually rather difficult to tell. Early on, the swings were going all over the place. As it settled down, it looks like the Labor Party hasn't been doing very well in Western Australia. Early on, they looked like they were picking up Cowan, and I'll just have a look at Stirling as well while I'm passing by. They look like they were picking up that. They now looks like the Liberals have held both seats. Labor looks like they've lost both Canning and Swan, so they're still, I wouldn't be definite on that. And Kim Beazley is in trouble in Brand, but I would expect the later figures may help him over the line.
What is the current swing you put on Kim Beazley's seat, though?
Just give me a moment, I'll bring that up. The current swing against the Labor Party in Brand is 3.6. He's just nudged ahead again at the moment. He's on 51%. That's still using an estimate of preferences. We've got 47 of 64 Boers reporting their primary vote, and I wouldn't make a bet on that until I get some preference figures later in the evening. But he is in trouble.
Okay, and we've actually got Simon Crean, a senior government minister until not too long ago, and Gary Gray, the Labor Party National Secretary, have joined us on the panel. Simon Crean, it would be another savage blow on top of the savage blow if Kim Beazley doesn't make it.
Oh yes, I think that goes without saying, but the information that we've had through from there suggests that he is going to get in, so I would think that Kim will be with us.
And when we were talking with Gareth Evans earlier, he said if Kim Beazley does make it in, that he is the obvious leader for the Labor Party now. Do you endorse that?
I do. I think it's pretty clear that he deserves the opportunity. He's campaigned magnificently, and I think has given a breadth to the leadership of the Labor Party. I mean, I think what's got us is the it's time factor, fronting up for a sixth election. I mean, you might look at 13 years, but when you talk in terms of 6 elections, it's a lot to ask, and I think that the Australian public have voted pretty overwhelmingly for a change. Our task now is to demonstrate that what they thought they were getting, they won't quite get. In fact, in many areas, I think they'll do very badly. So we've got to be an effective opposition. We have to be out there, ready to run as soon as the opportunity presents itself. But, of course, it's going to take a few days, in some cases a couple of weeks, I suppose, to see the figures come through.
I said earlier when one of your colleagues was talking about, was saying, yes, it's the it's time factor, but in 1972, when Gough Whitlam came in on the it's time factor, he had, by comparison to the margin John Howard has got tonight, a very small margin, really.
Well, I think
so there's got to be something more than just its time. I mean, this has been a devastating loss for Labor, a rejection, a real rejection.
It's effectively only Labor that has the big losses. I mean, I think the public does expect more of a Labor government, and I think that what is unusual about this is that we have really improved a lot of things. Whether people have seen that improvement, whether they're prepared to rate us for it, only time ultimately will tell. But if you compare where we've come in the 13 years to where we were, there has been enormous change. Labor has presided over that. But the more you do, the more you're expected to do.
Yes, but you see, this is the conundrum, isn't it?
Of course.
The conundrum is, if, as you say, you've got to do the big things, and John Howard says he's going to be doing big things too, but if you're going to do the big things, you've also got to carry the people along, and you haven't.
Well, we have up until now. We clearly haven't been able to continue carrying them on. But I think that there was a view that it was time to change without really understanding what it is they're going to be changed to. And I just basically, I just take the view. Well, can I just finish the point? I mean, you can get as aggressive as you like, Amanda, but let me just finish the point.
I think you're kidding yourself.
No, well, I'd like to make my point, and then you can make your point. I think that there were issues that the coalition slid through in terms of this election. I don't think that they will really consider themselves held accountable by very much. We've got to make them accountable. That's our task. So I really do see the opportunity, the need for us to rebuild, and that we will do.
Well, you may well go into opposition sceptical of the new government, but John Howard has set himself high benchmarks in the sense that he says he's going to restore integrity and trust to government. And it's not just an Australian thing, a lack of trust by voters, is it, Amanda?
No, it's not just that at all. Not that at all.
So he has set high benchmarks.
Nearly 30% of the people who we polled today said one of the key reasons they changed their vote was they thought we had better policies. Now, the ex-minister might not agree with that. He might think that they've misjudged us, but that's what the Australian people think.
But they will be capable of making harsh judgments again if you don't meet those benchmarks.
Of course they will. Of course they will, and so they should.
Gary Gray, is it true that 24 hours, 36 hours ago, you knew that this was going to be a big swing?
It's not true that I knew it was going to be a big swing. It's true that I had research from the first week of the campaign that put our primary vote at 37%. What's true is that I hoped it was wrong.
Well, in fact, I think it was at 1990 that your primary vote came in at 39% and you still retained government.
Yeah, but the difference this time round, Kerry, was our research was also showing that their primary vote was, to say the least, robust, was showing a primary vote of 48%. And that's the point at which we hit a real problem, because no one, certainly no one in the press gallery and no one in the insider circle in Canberra, would accept that the coalition was in such a very strong position. And so the coalition were able to go around telling people, no, it's a very soft vote that we have.
Well, it wasn't just the coalition saying that. I remember Sol Levervik of Newspoll was saying it poll after poll.
I was surprised when Sol's poll came out on Tuesday, which showed this kind of result. Sol doubted his own sample. And I think that's because most people saw it as being an uncredible result. But one that, in fact, if you look at the way in which the published polls had been coming out for the last year, one that's been on the cards for a long time.
So are you saying that there was almost that this campaign was almost immaterial to the outcome?
No, the campaign always had a chance of minimising the swing against us. In fact, in the first weeks, the News poll had an 11% gap in preferred votes, and the gap is now something in the order of 8%. So the campaign made up a significant difference, but not enough. We went into this campaign further behind, and in fact in 1993, 1990, 1987, 84 and 83, we were ahead on the first days. We weren't ahead this time, we were 11 points behind.
Okay, Gary Gray, thanks for that.
Kerry?
And of course, for two of the most analytical minds in Australian politics, I think we should hear now from Roy and HG.
Yes, thanks very much indeed, Kerry, and good to see you keeping the
Looking forward to many regular appearances from John Howard at Club Buggery. Shortly, we'll be having a full call of the board. That is all results around Australia. That's coming up shortly. I've got Michael Wooldridge, who I imagine will be the Minister for Health in the new Howard government, standing by in Chisholm, where he has improved on his majority significantly. Michael Wooldridge, what was the final outcome for you?
Well, Kerry, I think after we've had postals and absentees, we'll have 52.5% two-party preferred, which is a great result.
Still a little bit close for comfort in the future.
Well, Chisholm's always been a marginal seat, and I'm first and foremost a member of Chisholm. I keep getting re-elected because I've got a great bunch of people who help me.
And you're anticipating that you will be Minister for Health in the Howard government?
Oh, it's John Howard's call. I'm happy to do whatever he wants to give me.
If you are Minister for Health, what will your immediate priorities be?
I want to immunise Australia's kids, and I want to make sure people can get into hospital when they need it. They're my two big priorities.
And what about the second week?
Well, if I can do those two things, it'll be a lot better than anyone's done for the last decade.
Thanks, Michael.
Thanks, Kerry.
I'm also joined now by Peter Reith, who I assume will be the Minister for Industrial Relations. Just correct my memory, Peter. In the Fraser government, no, you didn't make it into the Fraser ministry, did you? You were in briefly and then out again.
I was elected in the famous Flinders by-election, which put a bomb under Hayden's leadership, elevated Hawke to the leadership, persuaded Malcolm to go early.
And catapulted you back out of your seat.
Malcolm reckoned if Reith could win in Flinders, he could win nationally as soon as he felt better in the new year. And of course, I was out. I was finally sworn in February '85.
Okay, now I'll ask you to wait, but we've got Carmen Lawrence standing by on the seat of Fremantle. Carmen Lawrence, not a great result for you over in Western Australia?
Well, the swing here seems to be considerably less than in the other states. We haven't yet had a chance to have a look fully at it, but I'm pleased with the result in Fremantle. We've held the seat to around 3.5%, and that's around about the state average or a bit below it.
Looking back at this disastrous result tonight, and there are some of the pundits pointing the finger at you.
I'm sorry, there's so much noise here, Kerry, I can't hear what you're saying. I'll try and turn up the volume a bit. Would you mind repeating the question?
Yes, I will. As you reflect on this massive loss for Labor, how do you feel about the criticisms that is coming from those who say that you have been one of the significant elements in Labor's downfall?
Well, I think it's very unreasonable when you consider that the swing here in Western Australia, where a lot of that publicity was at its greatest, is lower than it is elsewhere. And in my own seat, I've been held below the average. So that doesn't seem to be borne out by the evidence. I think it's very clear that the swings have been very substantial, as we've seen in New South Wales and Queensland. And I'm very sorry to see a great many very able and talented people leave Australian public life. And like the Prime Minister, I think in some ways we can be very confident about the future because the opposition, apparently, the two big government, have endorsed most of our policies. And as a member, I'll be making sure they keep their promises.
In terms of the kind of common line that's coming from Labor, that this has been an its time election and that is why you've lost, that of itself does not substantially enough explain why the swing has been so big.
Well, it may. After 13 years, a lot of people would be thinking, well, let's have a look and see if the opposition can do any better. And I think in some ways the technique of Howard and his colleagues of making themselves a very small target for most of the time, releasing their policies late and endorsing most of the Labor Party's policies may appear to have been effective. So I think that the combination of those things is what's seen the result here. New South Wales, of course, we had such a high watermark, we were bound to lose some seats. But I take heart from the results in Victoria and here in Western Australia together.
Okay, Carmen Lawrence, thanks for that.
Thank you. Sorry I couldn't hear you too well.
That's all right. Peter Reith, coming back to you, in terms of priorities, industrial relations, of course, has been at the eye of the storm of this campaign, and it's been one of the key and constant areas of criticism that you've had of Labor, certainly in the last couple of terms. What are your immediate priorities going to be?
Well, we've set out a very clear policy prescription for some changes in the industrial relations area. Obviously, we've guaranteed people their award conditions in terms of their take-home pay. That was a key part of our response to the predicted scare campaign. But obviously the unfair dismissal laws is one area where we do need to make some changes. We've seen surveys of companies showing that they've suspended their employment programs as a result of the operation of that, so that needs to be a priority. Obviously the introduction of the Australian Workplace Agreement, which was such a central part of our alternative to the non-union sector, is also a priority for us. And what we've got to do is sit down and commence that sort of sensible round of consultations with the parties to put those packages together. We are committed, Kerry, to the consultation. I think the Kelty intervention in the election campaign was one of the factors which went against Labor. in the selection campaign, but we've given a commitment to talk to the ACTU, to employers, to interested parties, and that's a commitment that's on the table and to which we are still committed.
I suppose the one substantial conundrum out of tonight, or contradiction out of tonight, is that on the one hand in the House of Representatives you've received a massive mandate. On the other hand, in the Senate, the Democrats appear to be polling very, very strongly indeed and will hold the balance of power in the Senate. Now, they have already indicated, Cheryl Kernow's on the phone at the moment and no doubt will comment in a minute, but they have already indicated that on some key areas of your industrial relations platform, that at the very least they'll be looking very carefully. They have put the thumbs down already, I think, to your plans for the IRC, the Industrial Relations Commission, and there's the issue of unfair dismissals to get through there as well.
Well, yeah, I mean, they have been supportive on the unfair dismissals, and look, I mean, if somebody's sacked and they've been unreasonably treated, then we both agree that they should have a right of appeal. What's happened is that the system has been so completely lopsided that it's acted as a deterrent to employers putting people on. But look, I mean, we're going to sit down and talk with the Democrats, as we will with other parties in the Senate. I'm not quite sure what the final numbers are in the Senate, but leaving that aside...
So Democrats could end up with as many as 8 seats.
Well, understand though, I mean, I think the Democrats' slogan is keep the bastards honest. And
that's you.
And,
that's you now.
Well, that's us now. But what that means is that what they've said to the Australian people is that they will ensure that we implement the program for which we have a mandate. Now, it would be a very odd...
she's shaking her head already.
Well, it would be a very odd... I think it's a pretty fair point. It would be a pretty odd sort of mandate if the first thing they tried to do is to prevent us from implementing our program and to fulfilling the promises that we've made. But, look, we will talk about it, and there's a long way to go yet, isn't there, Cheryl?
Yeah, there is a long way to go yet, and there are some things that we've articulated as clearly as you have in this election campaign. And look, you know, I think somebody has to be there to make sure that in your pursuit of the balance between employers and employees, that unions are allowed to responsible unions are allowed to carry on their activities reasonably. Now, somebody's got to take that role, and we're prepared to do that.
But you've got concerns about their plans for the IRC.
Yes, we have, yeah. And so we'll need to talk about that. Because I believe that you need that umpire. I don't believe that their version of the employment advocate is sufficient. I don't believe there's enough checking, and I don't believe it's right just to rely on individuals to come in and expect they have the power to take that matter further.
And let me say, I understand the concern that people express in the way that Cheryl Curnow has, and for that reason we've said that the independent umpire, the Commission, must set these minimum standards, the community standards. And so, look, there's a lot to be talked through. We do appreciate the concerns that they've got, but I think in the implementation of our program, we are obviously expecting to have a fair measure of support for the very significant mandate that we have. I mean, this is a huge mandate in the lower house. There can't be any doubt about this mandate. We will consult, but we think that we do have the mandate to implement that program.
But at the same time, you've got that mandate. On the other hand, you've got people, it would seem, also taking a conscious choice to put the checks and balances into the Senate.
Particularly Liberals, Kerry. There's a big difference between the Liberals' reps vote and Senate vote.
Okay, one question I've got for you, Cheryl Curnow, because as we speak, Kim Beazley's still teetering, very, very much in doubt. If Kim Beazley falls, what was the situation with your preferences? Did you direct them away, or did you split them?
Yes,
you directed them away from Kim Beazley?
We wanted to have a split ticket, and the Labor Party in Western Australia walked away from an arrangement we thought we had with them for a 50-50 split in return for preferences for them in those seats. And so we had to go and talk to the Liberal Party, and the Liberal Party asked for direction of preferences in those few seats, and that's what we did.
So basically, if Kim Beazley goes, you say tough.
I do say tough. He walked away from an honourable arrangement, in my view.
Okay, I'd like to hear from Anthony Green on how Kim Beazley's looking.
Oh, Brand's a funny seat. Look, Brand's got 91,000 people. It's the highest enrolment in the country. When we had primary votes coming in earlier, there was a big swing against Beazley. And that was all the country boos, Mandurah, those sorts of places. As the votes come in, you're starting to get those new housing estates on the southern side of Perth. Now, with the primary votes, the swing came back and Beazley got ahead. Then our computer switched over to using actual two-party preferreds, The same thing occurred. The swing suddenly got bigger as the votes come in on two-party terms. Beasley's figures improved. He's now at 50.3%, which is highest figure all night. And I'd expect we've got another 19 boots to come in, probably Metropolitan. I'd expect he'd actually hold it. But the trend in that seat has been continuing towards him. And it's still close. Still won't know the result tonight. But he's done this at the last two state federal elections in Swan, where he looked behind very early.
I think
came
he's getting
up,
a bit sick of it by now.
Well, yes.
Kerry, I was just going to say, I mean, it's an interesting question. I'm interested to hear from Bob on this. I mean, this is the future leader of the Labor Party. He's going to go through this at every election?
Perhaps he could try Kalgoorlie.
I expect him to win, and any seat we win in this election is not a bad seat. It's like the seat
very precarious, isn't it?
No. I mean, I think it's very silly to say someone's won a seat in this election by a small margin. Therefore, in any normal election, it's going to be a marginal seat. It's like the seat of Correa. We won it by 30 in 1975, but it was quite a good Labor seat, and we've never lost it since. It's come back to us. At the seat, any seat that we hold in this election, particularly in the states in which we've had swings against us, of which Western Australia is a long way from the first, I expect him to win, and I expect him to consolidate his position. With all my colleagues, I expect him to be the leader of the party. That'll be a plus for him. And I expect him to turn it into quite a strong seat for us. I mean, it's never going to be a seat, an 80% Labor seat, but I expect him to win it this time, to be the leader and to strengthen it.
Never
I think you're underestimating one of the real problems for anybody in Western Australia. I think that Kim Beazley is going to find it increasingly hard, if he is to be leader of the opposition, to service an electorate which demonstrably is going to expect him as a new member in a new seat to be able to spend time there. And I think really one of the quandaries in our Australian Federation is that for Western Australians it's so much more difficult being a member of the federal parliament. And I think for a leader of the opposition it's going to be an almost impossible task.
Well, I don't think almost impossible task, but a terribly difficult job, yes. I mean, the leader of the opposition is a very hard job. To be leader of the opposition from Western Australia in a seat you have to work to hold is doubly hard. But people are not silly, you know. I think if you're campaigning, if you're holding a seat as leader of the opposition, they accept the burdens of that position and they expect you to perform. They don't expect you to ignore them, but they recognise that you've got more to do than...
Bad to hear you say that you don't think people are silly. We think they've been very sensible today. Bob,
you never miss an opportunity. Very, very quickly, Bob McMullen, before we go to the...
1 out of 6 is not a great record, but it's all right.
Before we go to the call of the board, very briefly, Peter Reith has just said it. A number of coalition front benchers have said it tonight, that one of the significant factors of this campaign against Labor was when Bill Kelty made that speech. Would you have preferred he hadn't made it?
Well, in hindsight, we probably all have preferred we'd done a lot of things differently, but I don't...
Was that a yes?
I don't regard it as a very significant event in the election outcome at all. I think they're just trying to create a climate to achieve an outcome, which is not a silly thing to do, but it's also not a stunningly honest thing to do. No, I don't regard it as a significant event in the election.
OK, I think it's probably time to let panellists take a well-earned break as we bring you the results in all seats in a call of the board. And the panellists will be rejoining us briefly in about half an hour.